Think we're there. I think we're live. I think we are. Yay!
We are
Listen,
here.
happy Tuesday. I know that we are on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we are on YouTube. So I just want to thank you all for joining in today. Make sure that if you are here, that you are dropping in the comments, saying hello. If you have not registered with StreamYard yet, then do that because we may not be able to know who you are making those comments. But listen, I am so excited. For those of you who don't know me, I am Nicole Roan, the capacity coach. And today we're really doing a live launch of the next season of the Flow and Flourish podcast. It's been on hiatus for a little while now, but we are bringing it back. And I feel like this is the absolute perfect time. And so to help me kick this thing off, I have none other than, I call her Dr. Eley. We're going to put that
Come on,
out
doctor.
there. We have Miss Lynnecia Eley, and I want you to go ahead and just take a few minutes, let the people know who you are, and then we'll jump into this podcast. I'm combining or getting our heart and mind in the right place.
That's right. Hello. Thank you so much, Nicole, for having me today. And I'm excited for the Flow and Flourish podcast to be back. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. I am, Lynnecia Eley. I am known to the world as the Confidence Doula. So I empower women and young adults to unlock their potential, to go after their passions and their purpose, to do what it is that they ultimately love, making sure that they're tapping into their self-assurance and what we're talking about today, our hearts and our minds. I am a mom, a wife, a university assistant dean, a founder, best-selling author, business owner, all the things. So when it comes to capacity and flowing and having to set up boundaries and, listening and harmonizing that mental space as well as what our heart is telling us, I'm actively doing the work in all.
Can we say actively one more time? Like in the process, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I love it. And I know that this is your second time being on the podcast. So I'm honored that you said yes yet again. And like I mentioned, I'm also honored just to be kicking off this new season with you, because what many don't know, I've shared with you and, close friends privately, and just a little bit out here in these internet streets, that one of the major decisions that I made about 6 months ago now was to actually go back to work full time. Yes. And so that was a huge pivot. And when we talk about your heart and mind being on two separate pages,
right?
Listen, ma'am, I had to get them two together. And so I want to, kind of kick it off and talk about what does that look and feel like for you? Because you said that you're actively doing the work. And then we'll, share a couple of those tips that I mentioned or, that we shared on the social media streets about how do you get to that space?
Right. And when I say actively kind of doing the work of connecting my heart, mind, our hearts and mind, I'm an academic, so educator. So everything has to have steps or an acronym or, some point, a framework of sorts. So I think about it in three parts. You have your awareness, you have your understanding, and then you have your action. Mm-hmm. So for me, when I say actively, daily, I'm like, okay, let me be aware of what's happening. Where am I disconnected? If I'm feeling stressed, anxiety, that means my mind is doing something or telling me to do something that my heart isn't in agreement with. Mm-hmm. So, listening to those body signals, listening to self-reflection, that's giving me that awareness, like what is happening? Where's the disconnect? And the fact that our, daily, our minds and our hearts communicate between our nervous system. About 90% of the communication is between our heart and our minds. So when they're fighting, when they're like, I'm not listening to you, don't call me, la, la, la. Things around us react to it. So when people in your space, you're not feeling them, that means you do a little bit of self-reflection. When you're feeling that, anxiety and I'm stressed, nobody talk to me. You know how you get in those moods?
Yes, ma'am.
You're like, something is not connecting. So actively, I try to sit and say, okay, what's my feelings? What is my heart saying? What is my mind saying? And if they're not connected, we need to internally, we're having a conversation. We're having a meeting. We're bringing everybody to the table. And that's something that we have to get used to doing daily, sometimes multiple times a day.
It's
You
not a one
mentioned
and done.
right. You mentioned going back to work. Like, could you imagine what that practice would be before you enter a meeting? You just say, your mind is probably saying, this could have been an email.
Listen, and your mouth is this close from saying it.
It could have been an email. But take a minute to understand before you act, to make sure everybody's on the same page.
I love that example because it's in the big things, but it's also in the small things, right? Whether it is preparing yourself, like you said, your head might be saying one thing and then your heart has to say another. It's okay, girl. We live. That's what we do. We are mamas. You have to connect the two and sometimes help yourself to not just respond, because I know there are some emails that I get and I'm like, you know what, my heart feels for, let's say, a candidate, right? I feel for this candidate. I want to give them tips and tell them this is why the interview sucked and whatnot, but my head is like, okay, if you're not going to do that for everybody, then I need you to be consistent, right? And so even when they're good situations, and I know that I love how you talked about having that awareness and then making sure that it's mimicking, the action, the best action for that particular moment. And we do that daily, in our personal and our professional lives, as moms, as wives, as business owners, and all of that. And so you kind of went into that first bullet that we were going to talk about really understanding and knowing how to identify the disconnect. And there was something that you said that made me think about what has that looked like for me, right? And I want to hear your take on this too, because for me, it's been something just feel off, right? And at the time, you may not know that it's not your heart or your mind. You're not sure where it's coming from. One example of that for me was really when I accepted this one job, right? It was maybe 5-6 years ago. And my mind was like, girl, if you don't take this job, listen, it's around the corner from the house. It's a $15,000 increase. You got a parking spot with your name on it. What is wrong with you? My head was like,
yes.
Listen, but my heart was like, pump your brakes. Wait a minute. And I dismissed it. I dismissed it. And it literally ended up being one of the worst places I've ever worked in my entire life.
Right.
And so when you have that dissonance between your head and your heart, I know some of us listen, sometimes we don't. Tell me, about your experience with that when you're, really trying to identify where's the disconnect at.
And that's the challenge, though. We fall into those situations where we dismiss one side because we're like, you're bugging. What do you mean? This extra 15 is going to help me and my family do, whatever it is that you want to do. So you dismiss those feelings of the heart of you really genuinely being happy. And what happens is you may fail or you cause yourself disappointment. And I think that's what hurts the most. We talk about how, we cannot care how someone else, feels about us or, the reactions we get from other people. But it really hurts when you disappoint yourself. And only you know that disappointment because it's an internal battle between your heart and your mind. And sometimes it takes for us to go through that disappointment many times before we stop disconnecting and dismissing what either our heart or our mind is trying to tell us to do. So you talk about, having offers for positions when we talk about our careers that could set us up and, to pivot or to that next level, or, to that place that we've dreamed about.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally and on paper, and the title and the salary looks good. But what is that going to do for your character, for your core values? Like, how is that going to make you genuinely feel? Are you going to lead a team that is not, not
Mm-hmm.
living up, or not on the same accord as your personal foundations and beliefs?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a struggle. And sometimes we have to fall within those struggles so that we could climb out and, feel better about ourselves, and understand that we cannot ignore how our hearts feel, and we cannot ignore the logic behind what our brains are telling us.
Mm-hmm. I love it. You said a couple of things: the disconnecting, and dismissing. And a
Mhm.
lot of times we're doing that so frequently, right? I think it comes down to a couple of things. Number one, I think naturally as women, a lot of us honestly are people pleasers, right? We want to do all the things for everybody, and we self-sacrifice because that's what we're supposed to do, right? That's what we've
Mhm.
learned. That's what we've, told ourselves for all this time. But I think that another big part is honesty.
Yeah.
It's about having that honest to God conversation with yourself
Mhm.
about, not only what's working and what's not working, but like, am I feeling this? Am I dismissing this?
Right.
Or, am I rationalizing it? Because sometimes we do both. Because, like you said, I was like, you know what? I'm about to rationalize the mess out of this.
Right.
I'm not going to be commuting all the way to and from. The benefits are good. Did I say I had my name on the parking spot
Right.
and I get free lunch every day? But none of that mattered, because the truth is, what my heart and my gut were trying to tell me is that, ma'am, this is toxic. You see that
Right.
it's toxic. So you're going to disconnect from me here and
Mhm.
focus on here, just to wind up being in a situation where, a couple of months in, my husband was coming up to the job like, so
Right.
what had happened was, why she ain't here crying?
Right. But that's the reality of the decisions that we make when we dismiss, and we don't allow the two to be in tandem, because
Mm-hmm.
we could rationalize and say, this is logic. I'm going to, have a better title. I'm going to be revered at work. I'm going to bring home more money. But then your home life is saying, where's mom? Where's wife?
Mm-hmm.
That nurturing part is now being missed from home, and that throws off another imbalance in our relationships and our environment.
Yep. It sounds like capacity to me, right? Of
Ooh.
course, I didn't know it at the time, right?
Mhm.
Like, the financial component was amazing, but in my heart, there was this disconnect. And then I was frustrated and not showing up as the wife or mom that I wanted to be at home because of all the stress that was going on at work.
Right.
And so I'd love for you to kind of talk to us about, why is it so important for the two to be harmonized?
Listen, that is, how they say those $1 million questions? That is a $1 million question. And when I find it, I'm sharing the wealth, okay? When I
Come on, share the wealth, share the wealth.
I'll be sharing the wealth. Harmonizing your mind and your heart is important. It's crucial because, one, it allows us to, release limiting beliefs, one, where we may be seeking validation from outside sources, where we may need to self-reflect, where may need to take care of ourselves in, on the health side of it. You talk about, finance and heart and mind, physical body, emotions is also a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
It allows us to avoid burnout. And that is a word that, women in careers, women in business, and not just women, that's my passion and my purpose, but not just
Mm-hmm.
women. We burn out because we are too busy seeking validation, and we're making decisions based off of others and not ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we're lacking the need or the identity to have personal satisfaction. I'm going to say that again.
Please
We
do.
put ourselves in situations where we dismiss again, and we allow ourselves to have a lack of personal satisfaction and fulfillment. And what that does is that tear away at our self-worth. That tears away at our confidence. That increases stress, increases burnout, and then allows us to make bad decisions, whether it's in our businesses, whether it's in our family, or at work.
Relationships, all of it.
All of it. So harmonizing and having the two allows us time to take a moment, be grounded within, have better decision making, not be so swift with our words or our emotions. Emotions sometimes bubble up quickly and we just spit it out. Sometimes we have to hold those emotions in and say, what is this feeling? Is this feeling genuine? Is this a distraction? Am I distracting myself? Because we play tricks with ourselves.
All the time. I was just having a conversation about that earlier.
We play mind games with ourselves, and it is just us, but it comes out, externally how we, react to people around us. So that having that harmony and that tandem where they both can, balance. And what was that seesaw game we used to play? Or,
it's the seesaw.
The seesaw. We got to have that balance. Sometimes we do need to let our minds take the lead where our hearts can follow. But then we need to be, resolute in our minds that when it's our passion and love, we need to let our heart values rise above what our logic and our reasoning is saying. And that's how we keep that balance and harmony.
I love that. And it brings me back to, two of the major heart and mind conflicts I had. One was leaving corporate, right? In my heart, I was ready. I knew that there was something more. I wanted to have a greater impact outside of just, a corporation with 500 people. But my head was like, don't you do that. Yeah. How dare you? You like the medical benefits, don't you? Right? Like, what are you going to do about a paycheck? And so my mind was like driving me crazy. And I think that this is where faith comes in too. Right. Oh, yes. And faith is speaking to our heart and our head. So I chose to follow my heart and to have my mind come along, because that's what was best for me at that time. Right. And then you flip it to almost 4 years later, where I'm at now. And my heart was like, you got in this, to help all these people. Why would you even think about, going back and da-da-da? And my mind was like, ma'am, do you want a business or an expensive hobby? Right. Ma'am, what if you have the opportunity to have greater impact? You don't have any idea, what's in store for you. But that took faith as well. And so I love that you talk about taking a minute to pause before you react and allow yourself to, number one, feel the feels, right? Number two, to be honest. And then you choose, you take a little bit of both. It's like advice, right? You may not take all of the advice, that you get from a good friend or a counselor or whoever it is that, you have in your circle or your counsel. You take the bits and pieces, then you do the best with what you can. And you try to harmonize all of that together. So I love it. Thank you, ma'am. And speaking of harmonizing, I love that you talked about the boundary piece, that we have to have some boundaries. You talked about a couple of other things as well. Can you tell us, how do we make this happen? That's probably the other $1 million question.
That is like, if one is
what you got to do.
It's I talk about that a lot with confidence as well. It's a mental attitude, and it's also something we have to put in daily practice. So even prior to this this live and this conversation with us, I took a minute to, and you can do this every morning. I took a minute to just sit, take deep breaths. And when I talk about awareness, understanding, and then action, sometimes we have to physically do a thing for our mind and our hearts to connect. Sometimes, we have to physically move something from left to right. So what I do is you put a hand on your heart and a hand on your head and tell yourself a positive affirmation. Like, I am grounded, I am mindful, I am going to have the most amazing day today. And in that moment, what you're doing is you're saying, you and you, I'm talking to both of you. Behave yourselves.
This is what we doing. Look here.
Like connect. Talk to yourself. That has what has worked for me over the last couple of months. And I'm not a guru, but I could be a subject matter expert.
Come on, come on, Smee, let the people know.
You know what I mean? But all of this comes from experience. That's not something that you probably could find it in a book. Somebody wrote it. You may find it in my next book. But it's by experience. And that's what I know works for me. So I urge you to also try it. Put in the action to say, hey, I'm connecting you to, I'm putting you together. Don't be at odds, because we're going to have the most amazing day. And do that every morning. Or before you go into a meeting, we're going to think before we speak.
I know somebody right now needed to hear that, because they're going to have to take that with them tomorrow morning.
We're going to think. We're going to fix our faces.
Listen.
Sometimes you have to do that, but I would say that's how we begin to harmonize the two, or make sure that they at least acknowledge that they are both there.
That acknowledgement.
Could you imagine? Could you function without your heart? No. Could you function without your mind?
No. I mean, technically you can, but you're not functioning. But no, you can't function. Your body can still be, but no, I can't function without my mind.
You can't. You need logic, you need reason, you need to think. But you also need your heart to feel, not feel, to feel.
Yeah.
So make sure they know each other.
They have to talk. Right. They have to talk. Absolutely. You went deep with connecting your heart and mind. I think one of the things that, honestly, when I feel or recognize that there's a disconnect, I get out pen and paper and I write a pros and a cons list. Because for me, getting everything out of my head, right? And you guys are going to laugh at me, but even when it came down to, my husband and I, or me really deciding that we needed to separate, I pulled out my pros and cons list, because my heart said a lot, my head said a lot. But I love the idea of doing something, some sort of action. So for me, that is literally, even before I decided to go back to work full time, I wrote out my pros and cons list, before we decided to downsize so that I could pursue working as an entrepreneur full time. I wrote a pros and cons list because it pulls everything out. But this is where that honesty comes in, right? Like, don't just be writing stuff down because it sounds good. This is where your head literally is connecting to your heart, and you're putting them both together. And for me, it's something about seeing it on paper. It's like, ooh, I kept telling myself that this was a good idea for X, Y, and Z, but the way these cons look like they set up, you know what I mean?
You know what I call that? Narrative therapy.
Oh, come on now. Say that again.
Narrative therapy is what I call it. I'm a journaling girl. I love my notes. If I showed you my space right now, there's sticky notes, note cards everywhere. I don't have a conversation with a person without writing something down. Narrative therapy. And the beauty about that is we will see on paper in black and white where our minds are trying to trick us. Because in that moment, our mind is saying, write this down, because when you reread it, you're going to believe it. But we have to be honest with ourselves. we have to have courage and
Mm-hmm.
also lean on our faith to say, you know what, I'm going to write down what I'm feeling and not what my mind is telling me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Come on,
then be
narrative
able to go
therapy.
back and compare the two.
Mm-hmm.
It's narrative therapy. And sometimes we read and say, whoa, it was a whole lot of negative Nancy going on right here, you know?
Yeah.
But it allows us to get it out, one, and
Mm-hmm.
then we could analyze it and then put some action towards it.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Um, I'm going to be borrowing that for the future,
Yes.
just so you know.
Okay.
Um, because for me, it clears up or increases my capacity when I do that mentally, right? And then
Mhm.
the brain and my heart, I'm like, okay, I can really be honest about what I'm feeling, and it's here, and you can't run from it. You know what I mean? It's literally that narrative therapy,
Mhm.
ma'am.
Mhm.
I'm gonna need, if it has not been coined, I'm gonna need you to go on and coin that.
I'm gonna need to because now it's out on the interwebs.
Listen, it's in
People
the
are
internet streets. But
You
no,
know what's good about narrative therapy too?
hmm,
When we're thinking about our hearts and our minds, not just to download and get us from point A to B.
mm-hmm.
Narrative therapy helps with visualization. And where we're talking about being happy and really genuinely doing the things that we love with our heart, sometimes we have to write it out and visualize it so that when we read it back, our mind says, okay, I could do that. Because if they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to talk to each other, maybe you need to write it down, let your heart write it so your mind can read it.
That part. That part.
That's
And
it.
do you know what that reminds me of? Something
Mhm.
that you said in the beginning, affirmations, right?
Affirmations.
Because for me, I literally, after, the strategic planning we just had, I
Mhm.
updated my affirmations for the rest of the year.
Come on,
Um,
affirmations.
Come on, affirmations. And even if in that moment, I may not fully believe in my heart what that affirmation says, after you've said it so many times, that's the point. The repetition is for you to believe it, right? But you
Right,
have to say it out of your mouth because you're putting it out there.
right.
It 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 happens that way. And so I think, like you said, when you are getting it out and you're doing that narrative therapy, you're allowing your heart to speak on the paper and for your mind to recognize it and see, like, oh, so that's what you was trying to tell me. Well, why you ain't just
Why did you just say that? The good thing about affirmations, and I love that you pointed that out because I love a good affirmation.
say that? Mm-hmm.
What I want everyone to realize too, when we build, like you mentioned it, you have affirmations that you may not believe right now.
It's a stretch, right? It's a
It's a real stretch.
stretch.
You like, girl. But what I want you to do is find that affirmation, find what attaches to that affirmation. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
reason why you created that affirmation. There's an attachment that you're holding on to that you need to
Mm-hmm.
release. And you're not going to believe that affirmation and it's not going to come to fruition until you release that attachment.
Mm,
So
mm,
whatever that is that you're saying, that's out there. But I'm gonna keep thinking big. I'm gonna think praying big. Of course you are.
mm-hmm.
I'm gonna stay out there in the stratosphere.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as you're tethered to that attachment, it's still gonna seem far fetched.
Mm. I love that you said that. And I'm going to be real transparent right now, because one of the affirmations that I have kept on my, you know, quarterly or monthly changing affirmations is that I am bold, I am beautiful, and I am brilliant, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And depending on the day of the week, I might feel all three, right?
Right.
But there are days and seasons where, you know, I'm lacking the confidence and I don't feel as bold. And so
Mm-hmm.
I need to constantly remind myself that. Or there are days, especially, struggling with weight and, the COVID-19 that gave you the 19 that you're still trying to work off.
Right.
The beautiful part. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that I just love that you said finding out what it's attached to, because when I first started saying those affirmations, that one in particular, I didn't believe none of it at all, regardless of, the accolades, the degrees, the, likes on Facebook and Instagram and whatnot. I was really struggling at one point to believe all of those. Now it depends on the day, right? But overall, my attachment to, how I saw myself or how I perceived other people to see me or what I really thought I was capable of.
Yes.
It's connected in that. That was good, girl.
So look for that personal satisfaction. Release that seeking validation. Because that's your mind telling you, oh, you can't be bold until someone else calls you bold.
That part. How many times we heard that?
Right. Who called you bold?
I did.
Right. Who named you the capacity coach?
I did. And I struggled with that. Yeah. Like it was a whole thing. Yeah, it's that honesty, getting to the root of why you feel what you feel and releasing that attachment, like you said. So I love it so very, very much. Oh my goodness. Ma'am, look, I could talk to you all day.
How we do.
You know how we do. We're going to have a part 2 to this. I want to ask you a couple of questions that I ask everyone. But first, before we do that, because they're going to have to listen all the way or watch to the end. And if you catch in the replay, come on, put #replay.
That's right.
I want you to tell us kind of what you have coming up, because I know on the back end some stuff that's coming up, but tell us what's going on with you, where and how people can find you.
Thank you so much. I am genuinely trying to be so very occupied until the end of this year.
Listen,
and my schedule.
You're not trying, you do it.
Exactly. Exactly. So I am so excited that actually later this week, I am going to be talking to a group of ladies about that, moving from attachment to affirmation. So it's going to be a workshop on embracing your identity and how do you identify attachments, and then using those attachments and the release of those attachments to create affirmations, personal affirmations to help you through that journey. So I'm excited to be releasing that workshop that's going to be available for everyone.
Send me that info so I can include it, in the replay when I repost this.
Absolutely. And in addition, I am super, super excited that my 4th published book is going to be released on November 1st. November 1st is World Authors Day. So it's going to be a complete day of celebration. The book is called Coffee and Confidence. And if you know me and if you follow me, on Tuesdays, I would share coffee and confidence tips to help women and young adults just to feel self-assurance in their days at work, with their businesses. And it's a time to just take a pause, enjoy a cup of coffee, tea, ice cold water, whatever your beverage is, and just remember that there is a tip. There is a confidence boosting, something that can help us. So Coffee and Confidence is available now for pre-orders, and it is releasing November 1st. And I am so excited for this book to hit the hands of readers so that we have a full year. It is a book of 52 pairings, a coffee and a confidence tip to help you through your career, through your businesses. So I'm excited for that. And everyone can connect with me. My website is shecanaspire.com. My social media handles, Instagram, Facebook is She Can Inspire. I'm on TikTok. Listen,
come on, TikTok. Help your friend. On
TikTok. And of course, professionally, you can locate me on LinkedIn using my name, Lynnecia Eley. I am so looking forward to connecting with more of you and especially you, Nicole. Like we live in this space, and I just love always having conversations with you. So anytime you have something, I have something, like we're connected.
You can't get rid of me.
You can't get rid of
Confidence Doula.
it.
Listen. Yeah, and we'll talk about this offline too, but I would love to have you come do something in the Flow and Flourish community as well. It is growing like weeds. I got 50 or 42 additional members within the last week, which is amazing.
Come on, new members. Hey.
Come on, new members. Yes, but we'll talk about that later.
Yes.
I love you and I'm so proud of you. And I'm going to make sure that all of this information, of course, is shared with the live, but also in the show notes of the podcast and all of that good stuff, because Confidence Doula, you doing it big. Come on, Coffee and Confidence with 52 weeks and tips. Ma'am,
absolutely.
We're going to get that pre-ordered for November 1st. Let me ask you, what's your goal for pre-orders?
So I actually have.
I know you got one.
You know I have one. But listen, that's the thing about mind and heart, right? Mm-hmm. You have to set a goal for both. And my goal is to sell 100 books by my birthday, which is November 30th.
Okay.
So that has been my goal. I released Coffee and Confidence for pre-order on October 1st. Mm-hmm. So officially it's giving me 60 days to reach that goal. And I am so proud that we're about halfway there. And it's not even November yet.
Listen, of the pre-orders. Yes.
Pre-orders. So we are good. It's selling domestically and internationally. So I am so very much excited for that.
Okay, global author then. Listen here.
I'm adding things to the bio, right?
Yes. Okay, girl, let me get you out of here. Let me ask you these questions because it's still a Tuesday night and you are an hour behind. So I don't know if you remember these, but we gonna try it again.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Now my answers may be different, but let's do it.
But that's what they're supposed to be, as they should, right? So first question. Mm-hmm. If you could give advice to the 17-year-old version of yourself and give her just one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
Oh,
don't be scratching your head like that.
I know, right? Like, look, don't listen. No, I need to listen to the heart, right?
Yes. Here. Come on, put them together. Put them together.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yes. 17. Let me tell you, what I would tell my 17-year-old self is, don't worry what your family thinks of you. You're going to be so great in your passions and in your purpose that they're not going to have any other reason but to be so super proud of the woman that you've become. So forget about, the comments that they make. Don't worry. Don't let it worry you. Don't seek their validation.
Validation is for parking. Come on.
Right. Don't seek their validation. Let them think that they're disappointed, because when you rise, they'll be so much, so very much proud of the woman that you become because you stuck to what mattered to you.
Mm-hmm. You connected your heart and mind. You put them on the same page.
Yeah,
you didn't even know that was going to happen. Come on.
I didn't know. But it's been a journey, and it continues to be a journey.
Yeah. It's a process. It's not a one and done, like you said, on a daily basis, whether you're going into a meeting. Some days, I'll be honest, for me, it's going to the gym. It's like, come on, heart and mind.
Ooh.
Your mind say, don't you dare, right? Because she worked you last time. And your heart is like, but you really want to,
listen, that's enough. Right? That's heart, mind, and back. Like, we got to get all of them on the same page.
It's a process every single time, and it takes practice. Okay. Question number 2. Okay. Tell me one thing that you do on a regular basis to either manage your capacity or to make sure that you're flowing and flourishing.
So this is actually something that I don't think anyone, especially at work, they don't realize this about me. I may have a little private dance party.
Say what now?
Sometimes you gotta shake it off. Sometimes I close
Come
my
on.
door, I kick my shoes off, and I do a little something, whatever it is, an old dance, a dance I've seen on TikTok that I know I can't do, but I tried anyway.
Come on, courageous.
It just helps. I'm not recording myself now, but
Okay.
it just helps to just break up the day, And when I'm feeling like high anxiety or feeling like I don't want to do this. I want to go home. I want to curl up in a blanket with some fuzzy socks. I snap out of it. I
Mm-hmm.
put on a favorite song
Mm-hmm.
and I dance.
You dance it out. Oh my
Dance it
God.
out.
I love
Sometimes my door's closed and my lights are off in the office,
it. Mm-hmm.
and no one on the outside would know. No, now they know
I
what
know.
I'm in there
I know.
doing.
I know. Don't you
But
knock.
that's what I do. Sometimes you gotta shake a tail feather or something.
Listen, me and my sister were saying that the other day. I cannot, girl. I might have to borrow that too. That's good.
Yes.
I love it. And of course, last but not least, tell the one thing that you want the viewers and or listeners to walk away knowing or feeling as a result of our conversation.
Ooh, that's a good one. The one thing I would like everyone to know or to feel, it's okay to do the work while you're going along in the journey. And I think about that not just with personal, with your career, your business. Sometimes we feel that we have to get it all prepared before we start.
Mm.
I used an analogy earlier today. Can you build a plane while you fly it?
Mm.
You're like, no. But sometimes you need to get off the ground level to really understand what it is that you're doing and know where you need to focus your work. So
Mm-hmm.
that I think that would be the one thing I want everyone to be intentional about and to take with them is that it's okay to be doing the work while you're going along in that journey. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to prepare, then start.
Mm-hmm. Just
Start
do it.
and pivot. Pivot as many times as you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Gut check and check in with your mind and heart as many times as you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to put them on the same page, then start. Sometimes you got to let your heart lead and your mind will catch up. And sometimes it's vice versa. But if
Mm-hmm.
you see that gap is increasing, you're going to have to pause, self reflect, and bring them back closer together.
Mm-hmm. Put your hand on each of them. Get out your pen and paper so that what you call it,
Narrative therapy.
narrative therapy. Do your narrative therapy, and oh my goodness, yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it.
Mhm.
Ma'am, thank you so much for being
Thank
a guest
you.
on the podcast again and
Again.
blessing us with your second appearance on the show.
I
Um,
love being here.
Yes, this is not going to be the end or last of seeing us as a dynamic duo. So much more to come.
Come on,
Um,
dynamic duo.
yes, yes, yes. I will make sure that I get all the links of everything that you talked about, pre-ordering Coffee and Confidence, making sure you listed some other stuff, of course, your website,
Yes.
all the things that you have going on. But I thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being here. And I know that this has blessed someone. So make sure that, if you are watching live or if you're watching the replay, you comment, you let us know how this is helping you, that you, of course, share with another sister, friend, or fella that may need to see and hear this because they're trying to connect their heart and their mind. And last but not least, make sure that you continue to come back as the podcast continues to put out new episodes. This will continue to be the safe place where we talk about all of the challenges that come from managing our competing priorities personally and professionally. And until next week, folks, I will see you then. See ya.
Bye.